Dragon and Shanks are two of the most interesting characters in One Piece because they were both introduced so early on, and then later we found out they have such pivotal roles to the story, and there's still so much we don't know about them, like their past or their motivations or how they will potentially affect the story later on. And while we still don't know much about them in the main One Piece story, the Return to the Reverie delivers a lot of theories and storytelling that we've just been missing and been craving this whole time. But first, hi guys, how are you? Welcome back to the channel. It's been a minute. I was a little busy over the weekend, but we are back. In this video, we're reviewing The Return to the Reverie Chapter 1. This is a One Piece fan-made manga by Arthur from the Library of Alhara, and it's drawn by Professor Gemini, and also has contributions and like proofreading by a whole bunch of people, and I'll link them all down in the description below. You definitely should go and read this for yourself because first of all, this review, as always, is going to be a spoiler review, and second of all, it's a great fan-made. It's fan-made, but it's nothing like it's like the real thing. It's so well done that you wish it was real. That's how good it is. If you guys want to see more of these, be sure to hit that like button. But in this video, chapter 1, let's go. So much was packed into this chapter. There was so much good material packed in. It was hard to pick a highlight moment. But what really interested me was still Dragon, who was briefly mentioned in two places. In the end, he shows up to Marijois ready to do his thing with the revolutionaries. And he was also mentioned when Garp and Hina was having a conversation about the God Valley incident, and it was at the very end. It was very briefly mentioned, but it opens up like this world of theories that we could explore. So Dragon, as told by Garp, was involved in the God Valley incident. This was brought up because Hina asked Garp, like, hey Garp, Garp Central, like, you hate the Celestial Dragon, so why did you go out of your way to fight this strong Rocks pirate crew just to protect them? And then Garp just mentions, because my son was there. You know, it's so many ways you could take this with the theories with Dragon and the Celestial Dragons. One of the most popular theories is that Luffy's mom was a Celestial Dragon, so like she was maybe one of the good ones, and like maybe even she wasn't a good one. She was like one of the bad ones, but she met Dragon somehow. Maybe Dragon was a Marine before, and they met that way, and like kind of had like a butted heads a little bit at first, and then slowly fell for each other. Got that kind of vibe. I could definitely see that. And then maybe eventually Dragon found out all these bad things about the Celestial Dragons, and then maybe Luffy's mom got killed, or she got kidnapped, or like taken away or harmed in some way, and that really motivated Dragon to start the Revolutionary Army and do his thing. Another way to take this is that Dragon was just a Celestial Dragon. Now you may think this might not make sense because Garp would be a Celestial Dragon. I agree with that. I don't think Garp would be in a Celestial Dragon makes a lot of sense, especially because he's like the D-Clan, right? Always goes against the world government. They're terrified of the D-Clan. It wouldn't really make sense for one of them to be amongst them. But the way you could spin it is Garp could have done his thing, right? He could have been protecting like a Celestial Dragon girl, and he was like, oh, I don't really like the Celestial Dragons, but you listen, you and me, we could have something here. Maybe that's like a way it worked that way, and that maybe that something bad happened to Luffy's grandmother, and it could be the same story like the theory we just talking about with Luffy's mother, but instead this time will be like Luffy's grandmother, something bad happens to her, and then that's why Garp hates the Celestial Dragons, and then that's why maybe Dragon was a Celestial Dragon and like learned about the bad things, and then his grandfather his father Garp told him like all the bad things, and then he really decided to take action, and then Garp, maybe it was just like he started getting too old and like just didn't have that extra motivation. Maybe his justice is just he wants to protect the world. He's not really about flipping the world over upside down and all that. So he left that to his son Dragon to really push forward that narrative and that purpose. Another thing I thought about was maybe Dragon was a Celestial Dragon, and he, you know, found out the bad intentions or like the bad nature of the Celestial Dragon, and he's not actually related to Garp by blood. Maybe he was involved in the God Valley incident somehow, and he was like rescued by Garp, right? And then Garp took him in as a son. Well, at that point, Dragon would have been, I believe, a teenager, around 17, 18 years old. It's not like Garp taking Ace in as a baby. At that point, it would have been like him taking in like a full-grown teenager, so maybe that throws it off a little bit. But maybe it was earlier that it happened, that Garp took Dragon in. It would kind of like make sense with Roger's thing, where Roger was like, hey, Garp, I know you like cherish children. You think children are innocent. Maybe like Garp did this before with his own son. He saw a child of the celestial dragons, and he saw that he was innocent and like protected him and took him in somehow, and that's how Dragon became his son. And then maybe Dragon had a previous name before, like Saint something else, but like, you know, he changed his name but still kept Dragon as his name as a way to remember that roots, but he's gonna, you know, change the ways of that whole system and establishment. What's also super interesting to me is Garp and Dragon's relationship, because they're both grown at this part of the story. But in the past, how was Garp like a super loving father like he is shown to be as a grandfather to Luffy and Ace? It could have been a really touching moment if he, you know, went out of his way to fight for the people that he hates just for his own son. A really fatherly, loving moment from Garp. Just that relationship is super interesting to me, and like that's like the kind of information I want to see from the flashbacks and like the actual One Piece story eventually. So anything I could grasp, any little bit of information I could kind of pull and like theorize about, it just gets me really excited, and that's why this was the highlight for the chapter for me. But the chapter overall had a bunch of other stuff, so let's just jump into the actual review here, starting off the cover page. Now this cover page was done by a guest artist. They're gonna have a different one for every single chapter. This one I believe was Ninja D Spider. So Ninja Spider, but the D is like the D, like me, like I'm the king that way, you know, very funny. But the cover story, very well done, very similar to the original art style of One Piece as well. It's Garp and Sengoku like milking goats, you know, it's like they're in retirement. Sengoku's like pissed at Garp like he usually is, and Garp just goofing around. You know, it's just very wholesome, like your standard Oda like cover page request in a way. And you know, it's very fitting and very well done. So shout out to Ninja D's Spy D-er. But onto the story, we open up with a familiar face with Kobe, almost kind of like how the Reverie opened up, right? We saw Kobe protecting Dressrosa, the ship for Dressrosa and Rebecca, and him getting introduced again for the first time post time skip. And a little callback to that as well, he was introduced as a rear admiral, and everybody's like, whoa, not only did he become a Navy officer, now he's like one step away from vice admiral. But eventually that was corrected. Oda had made a mistake and gave him too much of a jump. He's a captain. But what's interesting here is that it opens up with Arthur introduces us to the promotional procedure for the One Piece Navy, and they're like kind of reviewing Kobe's like effort. They mentioned the Rocky Port incident, which really boosts Kobe's like status. It was an incident back during the time skip that involved like law that made him notorious. So we don't really know much about that yet, but just a little callback. Arthur knows so much about the One Piece world because he does all these in-depth reviews and different, you know, things with the Charlotte family and the timeline. So much detail and knowledge that he has about the One Piece world. You know, he could pull little tidbits and throw them in here, like the Rocky Port incident, just to make this story seem a little more realistic, and that's what really makes this story feel like canon in a way. But yeah, so we get introduced to the promotional like procedure. They're reviewing Kobe's efforts, and they're saying, hey, maybe you'll have another promotion coming soon. We will let you know soon. His next rank is Commodore, and then it will be Rear Admiral, and then I believe Vice Admiral after that, and then you keep going Admiral, Fleet Admiral. He's moving on his way up. Helmeppo as well gets a little love. They're saying, hey, keep up the good work. You're almost there. Helmeppo is very close to the captain rank, which was his father's previous rank, Captain Morgan. So that's a cool callback there. Helmeppo almost being at the same rank as father is something, you know, he would probably hold dear to him, like not as a way like getting inspired by his father, but like proving to be a better man than his father was. I also think this is a very interesting way to power scale Kobe and Helmeppo, because while they're ranking up a lot and they're definitely gotten way stronger than they were when they were introduced in the previous story, Helmeppo is still not yet at a captain level. And remember, Captain Morgan was taken out by Luffy and Zoro in like one of the first episodes and in like the very beginning of the story. So while they're very strong, they're still at like the strength of like, I would say pre-time skip Luffy and Zoro very early on, which is strong for sure, but they're not not like crazy strong. On to the next scene, we get to Garp and Hina, and they start talking about God Valley and the Rocks Pirates, that incident that we got introduced to by Sengoku in the actual story. One of the most popular chapters. I remember on Reddit, it went to like all. So it was just popping off. We got introduced to Rocks Pirates, the bounties, and everything. So we were just dying to get more information about that. Arthur delivers here. Garp essentially just puts it all out on the deck and starts telling us about the whole incident. First, he talks about God Valley being a settlement, another settlement for the world nobles, which makes sense. Marijois is like their main base. It would make sense for them to have another place, right? Not just one place where they're all gathered together. Maybe they have another settlement, and of course God Valley, the world nobles are seen as like the godly figures of the world. He also calls it Emerald City. Another neat callback to like this was something Bellamy mentioned in the Jaya arc as like one of the myths or legends of the One Piece world. Like Skypiea is a complete myth and Emerald City is another myth. And this will make sense as well because God Valley was erased and then buried through history, so nobody really knew about it anymore. So it could become a legend in that way, and it's another really great callback. Just something else Arthur could throw in, another reference just to make the story feel a little more real. And all this is essentially all his theories, right, packaged into a well-written story. So then Garp talks about why Rox was after God Valley. So Rox, if you remember, he was somebody who wanted to rule the world, and somehow he caught wind of the national treasure of the world nobles. There's one in Marijois, which we learned in the main story. Doflamingo had mentioned about it being this super powerful thing that could turn the world upside down if somebody had possession. And it would make sense if God Valley was another settlement for the Tenryubito. There would be another treasure there, and that's what Rox was after. And it turns out that treasure was the most powerful devil fruit ever. Now immediately your mind goes to Blackbeard and the Yami Yami no Mi, especially because he gets mentioned later on by Shanks as somebody carrying forth the Rock's legacy, and he was hiding in Whitebeard's ship and looking for the Yami Yami no Mi in particular. So, and it does seem like a very overwhelmingly powerful fruit. And while I think that's very possible, I also think it's possible that it's the devil fruit of dragon. We saw how powerful that is. He's kind of able to alter the weather, and God Valley, we learned from Garp at the end, it just sinks due to this great storm of sorts, right? So that could have been Dragon's doing. Maybe he was there and he had the fruit, and like the battle was concluding and he just sunk the whole thing with his devil fruit, and that would make it the most powerful devil fruit, and he's also the most wanted man. So it would just make sense him having this ridiculous devil fruit, and that being the strongest devil fruit as well. So more theories there to kind of brainstorm and think about. We also get a little more detail on the fight. Garb saying like the Rocks Pirates, they were super strong. Me and Roger, of course, strong as hell, but we would have lost. And Hina's like, wait, you mean you two alone couldn't defeat them? Then how did you beat them? And then Garp reveals that Whitebeard had turned and fought with Garp and Roger to defeat the Rocks Pirates. Now this does make sense because Whitebeard, he doesn't really fit the identity of the Rocks Pirates. He just wanted to start his own family, took in orphans, he was that kind of man. A lot of people theorize that, he got on that crew because of the Davy Back fight, not the one like Foxy made, which is completely rigged and it's kind of like bogus, but something more intense. Of course, that Davy Back fight originated on Beehive Pirate Island, which was Rox's base of operations, and that kind of connects it all. It just makes a lot of sense. That's the reason why. Whitebeard turning on them could make sense there. At the end, he could just see the tide was turning and it just didn't sit well with his ideology to keep fighting for Rox. This is also very ironic because Whitebeard, had his own crew betray him with, Squardo during Marineford. Maybe that was a moment he realized, he's like, I can't believe something I did to my own captain was because he was such a bad person. Now one of my sons has done that to me. Maybe that's why he had that emotional moment of saying, oh man, I was just a bad father. I neglected you. I'm sorry for that. And also it's very ironic of like, essentially if he fought with Garp and Roger, essentially he killed his captain, right? And Blackbeard committed the greatest sin, which is, killing one's crewmate. So Whitebeard could have done it like in the same way if he betrayed Rox and his crew that way. So I could definitely see that as a nice way to tie everything everything together. At the same time, I could just see, you know, maybe Whitebeard wasn't in his prime yet, and it's a way to hype Garp and Roger to a super crazy power scale level to be able to take everything down. Or there was another external force to help them or something. Even in this story, there was a great storm that came over and just wiped everything down in the end. And, you know, this scene, it needs to be animated and needs to be shown. Just, you know, from the Return to the Reverie, a little panel we got of like Whitebeard, Roger, and Garp fighting like back to back to back. It was just epic. I'm sure the Conquerors hockey bursting through and the devil fruits and everything, it was just gonna be an absolute mad scene to witness. But after the Garp and Hina interaction, we jumped to Shanks. He had just returned from his conversation with the Gorosei. Now remember, this is day 2. This is day 2 of the Reverie. So Shanks returns from his conversation with Gorosei, and he doesn't specifically like say that he talked about Blackbeard, but is heavily implied because at the end of it, his conversation with like Lucky Roo and Ben Beckman, he said we're going after Blackbeard, but it doesn't specifically say that he was talking about Blackbeard. It wouldn't make sense that if he was talking about Blackbeard, but it could have been like he talked about something else and then he decides to go after Blackbeard for another reason. But it's a nice interaction to see Shanks with his crew, something we really haven't seen since the very beginning of the manga, literally. Besides, the next time we saw them was in Marineford, and the rest of them didn't really even interact that much. But yeah, we see Lucky Rube and Beckman and Shanks, they're interacting, and they're talking about how the Gorosei didn't listen to him, and then that's because a Big Mom Kaido alliance is happening, and the power is starting to shift. And there's a very cool moment where, you know, Lucky Rube's like, hey, you sure you don't want to help Luffy out? He's got 2 Yonko on his tail, and Shanks kind of says, he's got his own adventure. We can't interfere. That would just be wrong at this point. He's not supposed to meet me until he's like ready to become the Pirate King, and that's a promise he has to keep, and I'm not gonna interfere with that. You know, Shanks like kind of bet his arm on Luffy and like the next generation, so it makes a lot of sense. Even though Luffy is seemingly against 2 Yonko, disastrous, just like a terrible situation, Shanks, you know, lets him have his own adventure, and I really like that moment. So after we get the Shanks interaction and we learn that he's going after Blackbeard, we jump back to Marie Joie to see the situation of what is happening. We find out what the revolutionaries are doing. We got Sabo and the other commanders. They're underground and like hidden out, and they're ready to carry out their plan. We also see Shirahoshi talk to Neptune about the relocation of Fishman Island, which will be happening on the 4th day of the Reverie. And then we get the entrance of Dragon. A gust of wind blows by and the soldiers are freaking out. They're like, what's happening? And we see this flash of Conquerors Haki and everybody knocks out, and Dragon's just walking in, and it's just an epic entrance. Absolutely well drawn, perfect storytelling by Artur and everybody and Professor Gemini. Chapter 1 of the Return of the Reverie, it's an absolute banger of a chapter, okay? There's like the information we got, the art style, it was so realistic, it makes me want it to be canon. And like I said, this is a nice blend between theories and storytelling. Artur is essentially presenting his theories, but he does it through this very impressive, well-drawn manga. The storytelling flows very well. The little callbacks, the little details, that Artur doesn't miss a beat with that because he knows so much, and he really builds anticipation as well for the next chapter. It's not like he's just dumping info on us. He does like give us a lot of information, but he, you know, decides very well what to throw in at which points. And it's not just a scene, it's a complete story backed with great art. That's why it's an absolute banger. But what did you guys think of Return of the Reverie Chapter 1 and this project overall? And of course, if you haven't read it, I don't know why you watched this spoiler review. Go read the rest of it. Of course, big shout out to Artur and Professor Gemini and all the people that worked on this. I believe Mr. Morge, O'Hara, Joy Boy all had a hand in this and like reviewing it and all that to make sure it was perfect. And so far, the story is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, if you want to see more reviews of the Return to the Reverie, let me know in the comments below. But as always, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, please hit that like button. It helps a lot with the YouTube algorithm. And if you want to keep up with when I'm posting videos, you got to hit that subscribe button. Guys, we're so close to 100. As of now, we're at 96, 4 away. I think we're going to hit the milestone soon. Thank you guys so much for getting me here. I'm really appreciative of it. And it's been so much fun making these videos and interacting with you guys. So let's keep it going. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell to join the squad. Squad as well. Follow me on Twitter, IamDKing4, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.